Good day, my name is Peter Lucas and I'm busy with Taeass403b. This is a major activity covering knowledge from Taeass401b, Taeass402b, Taeass403b, and demo2. This is part C, demonstration 2. The topic that we are talking today about is validation process, and we are going to do a validation process on a different unit of competence. First thing that we need to do is to just introduce you to the people that were involved with the validation process, which is Peter Lucas, myself, assessor and trainer, and John Matthew, who is the colleague assessor and trainer. We use the self-reflective method of assessment, and there's quite a huge amount of different methods, which is the validation meeting, benchmark, peer review of the assessment method and instruments. That's what we are doing today. Using the internal and audit process, using an external audit process, using an assessment panel, internal or external, develop a knowledge base of assessment, using trial and pilot methods, assessment by colleagues or other industry experts, project managers or experienced assessors provided input and recommendation, comparing results with other training providers in the similar industry. These are all different methods of doing a validation on assessment methods. The date is the 27th of the 6th month, 2014. Now the purpose of the assessment is to basically monitor or to improve the unit of competence, the assessment tools, the written test, the question paper, the model answers, the instructions for assessors as well as the instructions for the students. What will be accepted today is the assessment tools, written tests, demonstrations will all be discussed. Okay, the location for the assessment is at the RTO AZY. It's room 14. Okay, the target group is new students and experienced students, and students from different walks of life, referring to international students. The first question I would like to ask myself is the reason for the assessment. Once again, it's to improve the methods used in the assessment, also the instruments used and the evidence gathered and the decisions made after the evidence gathered, because this will all have an impact on our procedures and our policies and our processes that's in place at the moment. So I'm asking my second question: what do I feel went best with the assessment? What I like most is the fact that we could help the student during the assessment process, just give them a little bit more confidence, and we could get better evidence from the students by them understanding it a little bit better during the assessment process. Question number 3. What do I feel are areas that was not going too well in the assessment process? We could not meet all, well, there was one of the principles of evidence that we could not meet. Areas for improvement. The areas for improvement would be during the process we found that some of the rules of evidence weren't 100% to our liking. The rules of evidence and also the principle of assessment needs to comply with the NPR as well as the Australian Qualification Framework. The course that we assessed today was a course or unit of competence called UEEN-171A, Troubleshoot Fault Finding in Television Receivers. Now this course has got 4 elements to it. Element 1 talks about prepare to find repair faults. Element 2 talks about fault finding techniques. Element 3 talks about advanced fault finding techniques. And element 4 talks about documentation. Element 1 was just basically talking about the OS regulations and also the preparation. For example, what do we do before we actually start with the repair? Element 2 basically introduces us into the part where we started looking for different faults in different electronic circuits of the television. And element 3 is very advanced techniques that we use to find faults using specialized tracing equipment like oscilloscopes and multimeters and signal generators and spectrum analyzers and vector scopes. Element 4 basically just dealt with the documentation from start to finish, how we approach the job, what type of paperwork we need to fill in, and what we need to do with the paperwork and the process of the paperwork. Then once we finish the job, we need to document all our steps of finding the fault and also the documentation regarding which parts was needed to be replaced. The areas I feel that needs to be improved is, for example, we need to put a practical aspect to the job. When we do the theory test like we did, the assessment, it gives a good result, but to improve it and to make it more efficient, we need to add a practical aspect to the job, whereby we can actually say, here's a television, go ahead and try and find the fault. The resources that we had was adequate to do our assessment and to get quality answers from the students. Once we have put all this information together as discussed between the two of us, we will now write up a report with recommendations for changes to the assessment process. We will take this up with our head of department, where he will then take it to the director. In conclusion, we need to discuss the critical aspects of the unit of competency that we discussed. And firstly, we just want to say, for us there was 3 areas that we found to be of critical importance. One was the legal obligations, 2 was the principles of assessment, and 3 was the rules of evidence. The legal obligation refers to the fact that we need to keep all names and students private. We need to make sure that the environment where the assessment takes place is of adequate nature and it's a safe environment for all students and trainers. And the next one is the principle of assessment. Now, we have gone through all the evidence and we found that most of the evidence is valid. 99% of the evidence is valid. It is fairly reliable. It is fair, it's flexible in a sense that it can be easily adjusted for online presentation as well as for students with a disability. When we looked at the rules of evidence, we also looked at the fact that the evidence that was gathered was of a valid nature compared to the course that was presented. Authentic. There was a lecturer in class or a trainer in class observing the students and supporting the students during the process of assessment and gathering information. The course was current, and this is where we had to do some adjustments to improve and make it more efficient. We had to change it from a Q&A, question and answer session, to a question and answer session plus a practical application. This makes it a little bit easier for students to then do an online presentation as well as a video presentation either in class or online. And lastly, the evidence was sufficient to make sure that it complies with the NVR as well as with the Australian qualification framework for level 2. Because when we went onto the website for the Australian qualification framework and we looked at a level 2 performance criteria, we are still compliant to the regulation and code of practice, which brings us back to the training package in, requirements. Yes, we still do comply and it is still relevant. All we want to do now is to improve the assessment tools so that it can be ready for the next semester. Thank you, and I conclude. This is part C, demonstration 2 for Taeass403b. Thank you.